April 2018. The sun had barely dipped below the horizon in the quiet town of Fort Myers, Florida. A warm breeze lingered in the air, but something far darker was about to unfold. Inside a resort room, workers expecting nothing more than a simple plumbing issue stumbled upon a nightmare. There, in a bathroom cloaked in decay, lay a woman's body, lifeless, abandoned. But this wasn't just another crime. This was something chilling, something personal. A woman, alone. Her killer, closer than anyone could have imagined. Who was she? And who could commit such a brutal act without a trace of remorse? Welcome to the True Crime Vault. Hit subscribe, like, and ring the bell to uncover the chilling secrets behind real criminal cases. Today, we dive into the case of Pamela Hutchinson, April 9th, 2018. The Florida sun, a relentless spotlight, beat down upon Fort Myers. Usually, the town basked in a warm glow, fueled by the influx of tourists and retirees seeking respite from colder climates. But on this particular day, the tranquil facade crumbled. A disquieting discovery at the Marina Village Resort at Snug Harbor ripped through the peace, leaving an unsettling unease in its wake. Employees of the resort, under the assumption that room 404 was vacant, were conducting a routine check for potential water damage, prompted by a recent leak report. However, the reality they were about to confront was far more sinister, far more disturbing than a simple plumbing issue. As they entered the condo, the immediate signs pointed towards recent habitation. A purse, carelessly tossed aside as if its owner had just walked in moments ago. Personal belongings were strewn about the living area, creating a scene of unsettling disarray. A tentative, silent hello echoed through the stagnant air, hanging heavy and unanswered. A growing unease began to settle over the employees, a prickling sense that something was terribly wrong. As they cautiously ventured into the master bedroom, a wave of putrid air slammed into them with ferocious intensity, the source of the foul odor emanating from the en-suite bathroom. A bath towel lay jammed against the bottom of the bathroom door, a futile attempt to contain the sickening stench that permeated the room. The door, however, wouldn't other. Something, or rather, someone, was blocking its inward swing. With a final, forceful push, the obstruction gave way, revealing a horrifying scene that would forever be etched into their memories. A woman's lifeless body lay sprawled on the bathroom floor, partially covered by damp, stained towels. The frantic 911 call, crackling with static and the weight of disbelief, painted a grim picture for the emergency responders. Mario Village Harbor down to Fort Myers Beach. And there's a dead body in one of the units, and her body is covered in towels and there's blood in there. A pause, a ragged breath filled with dread. Okay, Stan, let me connect. Hold on. The serene, almost idyllic atmosphere of Fort Myers was in stark contrast to the brutal reality unfolding within the confines of room 404. Petty crime was the norm in this coastal town, a far cry from the cold, calculated violence that had transpired. The victim, later identified as 59-year-old Pamela Hutchinson, had been shot in the back. Her body was already in the early stages of decomposition, suggesting she had been dead for several days. She had been staying at the resort, performing a selfless act of kindness, helping a friend scatter her late husband's ashes, a gesture now tragically overshadowed by her own violent demise. Pamela's purse had been ransacked, its contents rifled through with ruthless abandon. Her identification and credit cards were missing, pilfered by her killer, adding another layer of unsettling oddity to the already disturbing scene. Two stuffed toy monkeys sat propped up on the pillows in Pamela's bedroom, positioned as if observing the unfolding events. They were a cherished gift from her mother, a sentimental reminder of home that she carried with her everywhere she went. The second bedroom in the condo showed distinct signs of recent use, raising a crucial and pressing question in the minds of the investigators who had been staying with Pamela Hutchinson. Detectives were baffled. The brazenness of the crime, committed in a bustling resort area without a single witness, hearing or seeing anything, not even a gunshot, was chilling. Pamela's aunt, Mona, struggled to comprehend the senseless motive behind the murder. She remembered Pamela as a vibrant, generous woman with an undeniable zest for life. She was a beautiful lady with a big heart. You would rarely find her wearing anything that wasn't brightly colored, and she had that energy that you were just drawn to. Her cousin echoed this sentiment, describing Pamela as fiercely loyal and fiercely independent. Following the death of her mother, Pamela had embarked on a profound journey of self-discovery, re-evaluating her life and ultimately divorcing her husband, James. With the divorce finalized, she was ready to embrace life to the fullest, to experience all that it had to offer. Her joy came from the simple pleasures, watching the sunset with a cocktail in hand, striking up conversations with strangers at a beachfront bar, enjoying the casual camaraderie of coastal living. She had even secured a new condo near the beach, a haven perfectly suited for her love of fishing, boating, and long, contemplative walks on the sand. She was scheduled to pick up the keys in just a couple of weeks, a dream now tragically deferred. With her inner circle cleared of suspicion, investigators turned their attention to the other guests of the resort, hoping to find a lead, a clue, anything that would break the case open. Management confirmed that Pamela had checked in alone on April 3rd. There were no signs of forced entry or any indication of a struggle within the condo. The resort's sophisticated security system required a key fob for access, suggesting that Pamela had willingly let her killer into her room. A receipt from the Smoking Oyster Brewery, a popular nearby restaurant, offered a potential lead. Dated April 5th, just after 7:30 p.m., it placed Pamela at the bar just 4 days before her body was discovered. The resort's high-quality security cameras provided further insight into Pamela's activities in the days leading up to her death. Footage showed Pamela wearing a distinctive pink cap, chatting with a man at the bar around 5:15 p.m. However, their conversation was short-lived. Another woman, dressed in blue, approached and gave Pamela a high five, effectively ending the man's interaction. The two women then spent the next 2 hours together, laughing and talking, their camaraderie evident in their body language. Witnesses said they appeared to be very friendly, as if they had known each other for years. The same woman, in blue, had been seen with Pamela frequently in the days leading up to her death, eating, drinking, and relaxing in the hot tub. They had entered Pamela's condo together around 1 a.m. on the morning of the 5th. Was this the person who had been using her spare room? The investigation intensified, focusing on the mysterious woman in blue. At 7:43 p.m., the bill was settled, and the two women left the Smoking Oyster. 3 minutes later, they were seen entering Pamela's condo on the 4th floor. Nothing of note occurred for the next 45 minutes. Then, at 8:30 p.m., the woman in blue emerged onto the balcony, seemingly distraught, muttering to herself. No one else entered or left Pamela's room that night. Given the estimated time of Pamela's death, the woman in blue became the prime suspect in the murder investigation. The net was closing in. The following morning, April 6th, at 6 a.m., the suspect, now sporting a pink shirt and shorts, re-entered Pamela's condo, leaving with a large suitcase. An hour and a half later, she returned, this time in different clothes, and exited with a full plastic bag. A resort employee later recalled a call, seemingly from Pamela, requesting a 3-day extension to her stay. The card was charged without incident. Between 6 a.m. and 12:30 p.m., the mystery woman was captured on camera repeatedly entering and leaving Pamela's condo, each time sporting different outfits and carrying various bags. At 12:42 p.m., the woman, now wearing Pamela's distinctive white hat, confidently strode into the parking lot, got into a white Cadillac Escalade, and drove it a mile down the road before walking back to the resort. She retrieved a few more bags, then returned to the parking lot, this time climbing into Pamela's white Aura and driving away. The brazenness of her actions stunned police. The attempts to disguise herself were clumsy and transparent, the abundance of security cameras making her efforts ultimately futile. Then, detectives in Fort Myers received a crucial piece of information that connected the dots in a way they could never have anticipated. An alert was issued for a white Cadillac Escalade jointly owned by David and Lois Riess, along with a suspicious call from a woman named Jess did. Weeks earlier, in Blooming Prairie, Minnesota, over 1,000 miles away, another body had been discovered, that of David Riess. His wife Lois was missing and had been named as a person of interest in his death. The woman in blue finally had a name, and her potential connection to another murder case sent shockwaves through the investigation. Before David's body was found, Lois had given conflicting accounts of his whereabouts, claiming he was on a fishing trip to some, and that he was suffering from a stomach ailment too. Others, David's colleagues found his absence unusual and noted that text messages purportedly sent by him were strangely coherent and grammatically correct, a stark departure from his usual typewritten messages. Trusting his instincts, David's business partner requested a welfare check. Arriving at the Riess home, police found the bathroom window ajar, a strange detail considering the chilly weather. Peering inside, they saw a figure lying on the floor. The house appeared undisturbed, David's phone plugged in and charging, the television still on. However, the bathroom revealed a grim truth. 54-year-old David had been shot to death and covered with a blanket. Lois, along with the Cadillac, was nowhere to be found. She immediately became the prime suspect in her husband's murder, but had vanished without a trace. Friends remembered David as a cheerful, jovial man with a booming laugh who loved fishing, boating, and hunting. A Navy veteran, he was. A simple, easygoing man who found pleasure in the outdoors. He and Lois had married in 1982 and had 3 children, Billy, Briar, and Braden, and 5 grandchildren. David's passion for fishing led him to open his own wholesale bait business, where he worked tirelessly, providing for his family and pursuing his lifelong passion. The investigation into David's death revealed a dark secret about Lois, a crippling gambling addiction that had cost her hundreds of thousands of dollars. As her addiction spiraled out of control, her relationship with David deteriorated, leading him to restrict her access to their accounts. She had even depleted her $500,000 inheritance, squandering it on the fleeting thrill of chasing a win. Around the casinos, she became known as Losing Streak Lois, a tragic moniker that spoke volumes about her destructive behavior. Legal documents showed that Lois had been on law enforcement's radar since 2015, her casino visits playing a role in her losing guardianship and conservatorship of her sister Kimberly, who suffered from Parkinson's disease. A civil judgment against her revealed she owed her sister $100,000, further highlighting the trail of financial devastation she left in her wake. Around the time of David's death, Lois had forged his signature on checks, withdrawing approximately $11,000 from his accounts, a desperate attempt to fuel her addiction. The similarities between David and Pamela's murders were chilling. Both shot with the same gun, both covered up in the same way, and both found in the bathroom with a towel placed at the bottom of the door, a macabre signature left by the killer. Lois Riess was now the prime suspect in 2 homicides, her crime spree spanning over 1,500 miles. The scope of her depravity was becoming increasingly apparent. On the same day David's body was discovered, Lois stopped at a gas station in Northwood, Iowa. She paid for a sandwich and calmly asked the employee for directions. "Hello, all right, see if you want to start. Heading south, would you take 35 south just to keep going on down to the next state? Is that the way to go, you think?" The employee responded, "I think so. Because I think Platte goes 35 goes through it, goes down to like past Omaha and all that." Lois thanked her. "Okay, well thank you." On April 2nd, while Tess Costa was cleaning her vacation home in Fort Myers, a white Cadillac Escalade pulled up. Lois emerged. Tess and her husband knew David and Lois from Minnesota. Having heard about David's murder and Lois's disappearance, Tess stared at the woman in her driveway, squinting to confirm her suspicion. "Can I help you?" she asked Lois quickly, shook her head saying, wrong house," before speeding away. Tess was baffled as to why Lois would appear at her house. She later discovered that someone had called her family's business, seeking information about the location of their vacation home. Was Lois planning to hide there, to rob the place? Could Tess have been another victim, narrowly escaping a similar fate? Recognizing Lois, Tess immediately called the Minnesota police, who directed her to the Fort Myers detectives. Frustratingly, her calls were not taken seriously, and she was bounced between different stations, her warnings seemingly dismissed as those of an overzealous and perhaps unreliable witness. "Hay County Sheriff's Office. This is Sonny speaking. How can I help you?" Tess explained. "Hi, there's an ATV out for Lois Riess from Blooming Prairie, Minnesota in Steele County. She just got out of a car at my Florida house. I also live in Blooming Prairie, so I know about the whole thing. But she just got out of her '05 white Escalade in front of my house, and I think wanted to inquire." The dispatcher asked, "Are you still there?" Tess confirmed. "Yes. This is Lake County, Florida, ma'am." The dispatcher responded, "Yes. Okay." Tess interrupted, "So I am at Fort Myers Beach. She was just here." The dispatcher then said, Okay. And you do some research in Steele County, Minnesota, that's trying to find her. Tess clarified. Okay. So she has a warrant. Is that what you're saying? The dispatcher confirmed. Yes. For the possible murder of her husband and for surfer embezzling charges. By the time the police finally arrived at her driveway, Lois was long gone, having made her way to the resort in Snug Harbor and the unsuspecting Pamela Hutchinson. This brings us back to Pamela's case. Police believed Lois befriended Pamela because she thought they resembled each other, intending to steal her identity and evade capture. After murdering Pamela, emptying her room, and fleeing the resort, Lois withdrew $5,000 from Pamela's bank account and checked into a Hilton hotel in Ocala, a few hours north of Fort Myers. She used Pamela's credit card and ID, ordered room service, and rented a movie, living a life of stolen luxury and comfort on the blood money she had acquired. Predictably, she was gone by the time the police arrived, always managing to stay one step ahead of the law, a cunning predator constantly evading capture. After stopping to withdraw another $500, she continued her escape in Pamela's car, driving almost $1,000 to Kina, Louisiana. There, she visited another casino, indulging her insatiable gambling addiction, winning $1,500, which she curiously collected using her own ID this time, a moment of unexpected carelessness in her calculated deception. Later, she attempted to withdraw more money from Pamela's bank account, but the transaction was declined, alerting the authorities to her fraudulent activities. And agitated, Lois left the casino and drove into Texas, her options dwindling and her desperation growing. The Lee County Sheriff's Office issued a warrant for her arrest, including charges of second-degree murder, ID, theft, grand theft, and grand theft auto, a comprehensive list of the crimes she had committed across state lines. The news spread nationwide, igniting a widespread public outcry and fueling the urgency of the manhunt. New this morning, we're getting some information on a big national story that may have a local connection. There is a nationwide manhunt tonight for a grandmother. The reports continued. Police say she is killed twice and should be considered armed and dangerous. All right, our top story here at 5:30. We have a Minnesota woman who's now wanted in connection. The manhunt had become a cross-country search involving multiple law enforcement agencies and capturing the attention of the entire nation. Authorities say that Lois Riess may be targeting women who look like her, so that she can steal their identity. A chilling warning was issued to the public. The only thing we know is that she is absolutely armed, dangerous. She's on the run, and we need to do everything we can to bring her to justice. Our main fear is once she diminishes all her resources, that she will be desperate and she will commit another act of violence. Mexican authorities and Border Patrol were also placed on high alert, trying to anticipate her next move and potential victims, ensuring that she could not cross the border and escape international justice. Lois Riess had no intention of surrendering, and the nationwide hunt intensified, fueled by public fear and the unwavering determination of law enforcement. The public remained vigilant, reporting any sightings, becoming active participants in the effort to bring her to justice. Is anyone in danger right now? One reporter asked. Another responded, I don't know. Well, she has been missing for a week and perhaps she stole a bunch of money and her husband was found shot in the back 5 times. A hit on Pamela's license plate came through in Corpus Christi, Texas, confirming that she was still driving the stolen vehicle and narrowing down her location. Then, it seemed, she slowed down, perhaps feeling a false sense of security or simply running out of options. Lois checked into a motel in South Padre Island, a popular tourist destination, where she spent the next week, blending in with the vacationing crowds and attempting to maintain a low profile. As police teams closed in, Lois spent her time in bars, sipping margaritas, and introducing herself as Lona, a recent widow, fabricating a new identity to disarm potential victims and conceal her true nature. Employees and patrons described her as transforming from a stranger into a friend, overnight, a master manipulator, capable of winning people over with her charm and fabricated stories. She was fun, approachable, and well-liked, a seemingly harmless and even endearing figure, masking the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. But all it took was one person to recognize her from the news to connect the dots, shattering her carefully constructed facade and setting in motion the final act of the manhunt. Finally, on April 19th, Lois Riess was apprehended at the Sea Ranch, a waterfront restaurant and bar, her escape finally thwarted by the vigilance of the public and the relentless pursuit of law enforcement. The multi-state manhunt was over, bringing a sense of relief and closure to a nation gripped by fear and fascination. Armando Lee, a manager at Daddy's restaurant, was stunned to learn that Lois Riess had been frequenting his establishment, interacting with his staff and customers, while concealing her true identity and the crimes she had committed. I was like, what the heck is going on? You never think that something like that will happen here, he exclaimed, expressing the disbelief and shock that resonated throughout the community. One of his employees, recognizing Riess from news coverage, discreetly called 911, alerting the authorities to her presence. Within minutes, U.S. Marshals arrived, but she had already left for another restaurant, sensing that her cover had been blown and attempting to evade capture once again. She was at the bar, and then she noticed something was going on, and she left, said one employee, recounting the tense moments leading up to her arrest. Authorities were relieved to have her in custody, knowing that she was no longer a threat to the public. Today's a huge win. She can't strike again. That was our main concern. We rang a killer off the streets, declared one official, expressing the sense of accomplishment and relief that permeated law enforcement. She was extradited back to Florida and held without bond, facing the consequences of her heinous crimes. Detectives who interviewed her described her as cold, almost evil, with a blank, emotionless stare, a chilling demeanor that reflected the darkness within her. Her motel room contained a disturbing collection of items, many not hers: bags, Pamela's clothing and jewelry, CDs and DVDs, casino flyers, guns, drugs, checkbooks, and hand-drawn maps, a chaotic assortment of stolen goods, and incriminating evidence that painted a clear picture of her criminal activities and unstable mental state. Detectives believed that she would have claimed more victims if she had remained free, and those she befriended in Texas felt fortunate to be alive, narrowly escaping a potentially deadly encounter with a killer grandma. One Texas woman recounted meeting Lois at Liam's Steakhouse on South Padre Island, unknowingly befriending a cold-blooded murderer. She came up to the bar where I was having dinner, and she said something like, "Well, I guess we're both dining alone. She's very, I guess you could say, friendly, outgoing," the woman recalled, describing Lois's disarming demeanor and her ability to quickly establish rapport with strangers. Lois claimed to be a widow, which resonated with the woman, who was also widowed, creating a false sense of connection and shared experience. "I didn't know that she was a widow because she killed her husband," the woman stated, with a chilling sense of realization. The woman drove Riess back to the Motel 6 that night, extending her hospitality to a dangerous stranger. "Friday the 13th, we had dinner again at the same spot, and Friday the 13th is really my lucky day, because she did not kill me," she said, with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief, acknowledging the potentially deadly consequences of her encounter. That night at Liam's, the woman said she didn't feel well, leading bartenders to suspect that Riess had drugged her drink, possibly as a pretext to go home with her and carry out her sinister plans. "I don't remember how we talked about how she was going to come back to my house, but Riess did spend the night at her house. She saw that I had a lot of security cameras in my house, and maybe that saved my life. I don't know," she speculated, suggesting that the presence of security cameras may have deterred Riess from carrying out her plans. Text messages seized by detectives revealed plans for future encounters, indicating that Riess had intended to continue her relationship with a woman, potentially leading to another act of violence. "Would love to keep in touch," Riess wrote in one message. In another, she said, "Guess where I'm dining, my friend," where she were also attempting to solidify their bond and entice her to meet again. The woman learned that Riess had planned another dinner, but then disappeared, leaving without a word. When she arrived at Liam's that evening, a waiter broke the news, revealing the shocking truth about her new friend. "Can't describe the feeling that I had in my stomach. I had like the shakes. I was in a state of shock. I just couldn't believe it. I just feel like I dodged a bullet," she confessed, expressing the profound emotional impact of discovering she had unknowingly befriended a notorious killer. "Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm Chief Assistant Amira Fox," began the official announcement of the legal proceedings. "Today, a Lee County grand jury has indicted Lois Ann Riess for first-degree murder with a firearm of 59-year-old Pamela Hutchinson on Fort Myers Beach in April of this year, the statement declared, marking the formal beginning of the legal process to bring Riess to justice. A grand jury later indicted her on first-degree murder charges, first in Pamela's case, and then David's, solidifying the case against her and paving the way for a trial. She pleaded not guilty, maintaining her innocence despite the overwhelming evidence against her. 6:05 is your time now. Accused killer Lois Riess is now facing the death penalty, announced the state attorney's office, signifying the seriousness of the charges and the potential consequences she faced. Today, we might get some more information on when the trial for Lois Riess will start. She has a pretrial conference today in Lee County, reported the news, keeping the public informed about the progress of the case. Her lawyer requested more time before the trial, seeking to adequately prepare a defense against the formidable evidence presented by the prosecution. Finally, in December 2019, the moment of reckoning arrived, the day when Lois Riess would face the consequences of her actions, and answer for the lives she had taken. First-degree murder with a firearm, a capital felony, which is punishable by the death penalty or life. How do you plead? The court asked, setting the stage for her plea. Guilty, Lois Riess responded, her voice barely audible, shocking the courtroom with her unexpected confession. Do you admit that on or about or between April 5, 2018 and April 9, 2018 in Lee County, Florida, you did unlawfully from a premeditated design to effect the death of a human being, kill and murder Pamela Hutchinson, a human being, by shooting her with a firearm, and during the commission of said offense did carry, display, use, and did actually possess a firearm discharge or a firearm, that as a result of the discharge did cause the death of or great bodily harm to Pamela Hutchinson. Do you admit that? The court pressed, seeking to confirm her understanding and acceptance of the charges against her. Yes, Lois Riess replied, her voice barely a whisper, acknowledging her guilt and admitting to the heinous crime she had committed. Lois Riess, now 57, faced a litany of charges: the first-degree murder of Pamela Hutchinson, grand theft auto, grand theft, and criminal use of identification, a comprehensive list of the crimes that had defined her murderous rampage across state lines. The court handed down a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, seemingly closing the book on her crimes and ensuring that she would never again pose a threat to society. However, the legal saga continued, taking unexpected twists and turns. In August 2020, despite initially pleading not guilty to the murder of her husband, David Riess stunned the court by pleading guilty to the first-degree premeditated murder of David in 2018, accepting responsibility for the death of the man she had once vowed to love and cherish. The consequence: another life sentence, again without the possibility of parole, solidifying her fate and ensuring that she would spend the rest of her days behind bars. The narrative took another dramatic turn when Riess also changed her plea to guilty for first-degree murder and Hutchinson's death, finally acknowledging her culpability in both homicides. The court, for the second time, sentenced her to life in prison, ensuring she would never walk free and bringing a sense of finality to the long and arduous legal process. The courtroom became a stage for raw emotion as her son, Billy, confronted her, expressing the pain and betrayal he felt as a result of her actions. You just left, he accused, his voice thick with pain and resentment. We had nobody. It will take a lot for me to ever talk to you or see you again. There's no excuse for it. I don't care how many times you apologize. You stole something from us that we can never get back, he declared, articulating the irreparable damage she had inflicted upon her family. Her other son, Braden, struggled to reconcile the woman he knew with the monster she had become, grappling with the cognitive dissonance of accepting his mother's horrific actions. No one could have seen this coming, he lamented, expressing the disbelief and shock that permeated his family. Yes, she had her demons, especially with the gambling, but double murder, we couldn't believe it. Nobody ever suspected anything like this. It's devastated our entire family, he confessed, acknowledging the profound and lasting impact of her crimes. Braden, clinging to fragments of the past, shared home videos, desperate to paint a different picture of the woman branded in national headlines as the killer grandma, seeking to salvage some semblance of the loving mother he once knew. My mom was a good lady, he insisted, clinging to the memories of a happier past. She was caring, always putting herself and us kids first, he stated, seeking to emphasize the positive aspects of her character before she succumbed to darkness. Brayden desperately sought an explanation for her actions, suggesting, "I believe my mother may have had some kind of mental breakdown. Something just happened in her brain, like it made her snap. She had her own demons, lately, I guess, the past few years. She developed a gambling addiction and was dealing with that." I'm shocked, man. I'm still shocked. It feels like a bad movie. I feel like I'm going to wake up and it's going to be, back to normal. But it's not. He speculated, struggling to comprehend the events that had shattered his world. Even Lois's friends echoed this sentiment of disbelief, struggling to reconcile the woman they knew with the cold-blooded killer she had become. She had always been the kindest, most personable lady. Never so much as even an angry outburst, one confided, expressing the shocking confusion that rippled through her social circle. In subsequent interviews in a documentary entitled "I'm Not a Monster," Lois offered a defense that many found difficult to accept, attempting to mitigate her culpability and shift blame for her actions. She claimed that she and David had a turbulent relationship, marked by frequent arguments and emotional turmoil. In a shocking twist, she alleged that during one such argument, David handed her a gun and sarcastically told her to "get it right this time," alluding to a past suicide attempt, a claim that was met with skepticism and disbelief by authorities and the public alike. Regarding Pamela Hutchinson, Lois claimed, "I had never anticipated hurting that woman," attempting to downplay her role in the premeditated murder and distance herself from the heinous crime. However, authorities dismissed her claims, stating, "That doesn't hold water. You picked this victim and killed her in cold blood," underscoring the calculated nature of her crime and rejecting her attempts to rationalize her actions. Lois, grappling with the enormity of her actions, stated, "I don't have all answer to that. I've never given an interview before. This is the right thing to do," attempting to portray herself as a victim of circumstance and a victim of her own mental instability.